Imagine waking up tomorrow and every hospital on Earth is gone. Every pharmacy, every pill, every antibiotic, every vaccine wiped out overnight. A simple cut on your hand could kill you within days. A fever could spiral into something fatal within hours. Your child gets an ear infection, and there is absolutely nothing you can do. That is not a dystopian nightmare. That was simply Tuesday for our ancient ancestors. And yet they survived. For hundreds of thousands of years, before a single drop of modern medicine existed, humans not only survived but thrived, built civilizations, raised families, and lived long enough to pass their knowledge down through generations. So the question that should be burning in your mind right now is how? How on earth did they do it? The answer is more fascinating, more clever, and honestly more humbling than most people ever realize. Because ancient humans were not stumbling around helplessly waiting to die. They were observing, experimenting, adapting, and developing sophisticated systems of healing that in some cases modern science is only now beginning to understand and validate. This is the story of human survival before medicine, and it will change the way you think about your own body forever. Let's go back roughly 300,000 years. Early Homo sapiens are wandering across the African savanna. There are no doctors. There are no hospitals. There is no germ theory. Nobody knows what a virus is. Nobody understands infection. And yet when one of these early humans gets injured, something remarkable happens. The group does not abandon them. The community gathers, and someone, probably an elder, reaches for specific plants, specific roots, specific leaves that they have learned, through generations of painful trial and error, can stop bleeding, reduce swelling, or fight off the infection beginning to fester in that wound. This was not random. This was not luck. This was accumulated knowledge, passed down like sacred fire from one generation to the next. Archaeologists have found evidence of medicinal plant use dating back at least 77,000 years. At Shanidar Cave in Iraq, a Neanderthal burial site contained traces of pollen from plants we now classify as having genuine medicinal properties, plants like yarrow, groundsel, and ephedra. Some researchers believe these plants were deliberately placed with the body, suggesting even Neanderthals understood that certain plants had healing power. Think about that for a moment. Before modern humans even dominated the planet, our closest relatives were already using herbal medicine. But plants were just the beginning. Ancient humans discovered something that would become one of their greatest survival tools, and it was hiding in plain sight all around them: their own immune system. The human body, when left to its own devices under natural conditions, is an astonishing fighting machine. And ancient humans, without realizing it, lived in ways that kept that immune system in peak condition. They spent nearly all of their time outdoors, constantly exposed to sunlight, which triggered the production of vitamin D, one of the most critical regulators of immune function we know of today. They ate wildly diverse diets filled with hundreds of different plant species, which cultivated an extraordinarily rich gut microbiome. Modern research is now confirming that a diverse gut microbiome is directly linked to stronger immune response, lower inflammation, and greater resilience against disease. Ancient hunter-gatherers were not eating the same 10 foods every week the way most modern people do. They were consuming potentially hundreds of different plants, roots, berries, fungi, and animals, creating a gut ecosystem so rich and complex that scientists studying isolated tribes today are stunned by its biodiversity compared to industrialized humans. And then there was movement. Ancient humans did not sit at desks for 8 hours a day. They walked, they ran, they climbed, they carried. Researchers estimate that hunter-gatherers moved between 5 and 15 miles per day, on average. That constant varied physical activity was doing things inside their bodies that no ancient healer could have articulated, but that modern science can now measure, reducing chronic inflammation, regulating blood sugar, strengthening cardiovascular function, enhancing lymphatic circulation, and flooding the brain with neuroprotective compounds. Their lifestyle was, in a very real sense, their medicine. Now here is where it gets even more interesting. Ancient humans were also incredibly strategic about infection. Without knowing anything about bacteria or viruses, many ancient cultures developed practices that dramatically reduced the spread of disease. Many hunter-gatherer groups moved frequently, not just to follow food, but a behavior pattern that, whether intentional or not, prevented the buildup of pathogens in any one location. They instinctively avoided water sources near animal carcasses. They buried the dead. They isolated the sick. Evidence from ancient burial sites and cave dwellings shows that many cultures practiced forms of quarantine long before anyone understood why it worked. They just knew through painful experience that if you stayed near the sick person, you became the sick person. Some of the most jaw-dropping survival strategies ancient humans developed involved wound care. Before antiseptics existed in any bottle or tube, ancient healers were using substances we now know have genuine antimicrobial properties. Honey, raw, unprocessed honey, has been used to treat wounds for at least 8,000 years across cultures, from ancient Egypt to ancient India, and modern microbiology confirms exactly why it works. Honey contains hydrogen peroxide, has a pH that inhibits bacterial growth, and creates an osmotic environment that literally draws water out of bacterial cells, destroying them. Ancient Egyptians were packing wounds with honey, not because they understood osmosis, but because they observed that wounds packed with honey did not rot. They connected the result to the action, and they remembered it. Clay was another remarkable ancient medicine. Certain types of clay, particularly bentonite and kaolin, have been applied to wounds and skin infections across dozens of ancient cultures on every continent. Scientists studying these clays have found that they contain minerals with genuine antibacterial activity, capable of killing strains like E. coli and Salmonella. Indigenous cultures use specific clays to treat gastrointestinal illness, skin infections, and even snake bites. They did not know the mechanism, but they knew it worked. And across thousands of years of observation, they had identified precisely which clays worked and which did not. Spiderwebs were collected and applied to bleeding wounds in ancient Greece and Rome. This sounds like superstition until you discover that spider silk is naturally rich in vitamin K, which plays a critical role in blood clotting, and has been found to have some antibacterial properties as well. Maggots deliberately placed in infected wounds by cultures from ancient Mayan civilization to Aboriginal Australians were used to eat dead and infected tissue, a practice so effective that it was actually abandoned with the rise of antibiotics and is now being reintroduced in modern wound care because antibiotic-resistant bacteria have made it necessary again. Ancient wisdom outpacing modern assumptions. It happens more often than we like to admit, but perhaps the most underappreciated survival strategy of ancient humans was the one that happened inside their communities. Social bonds. Ancient humans were intensely social creatures who lived in tight-knit groups, and that social cohesion was not just emotionally comforting, it was biologically protective. Modern psychoneuroimmunology, the study of how the mind, nervous system, and immune system interact, has established beyond any reasonable doubt that social isolation suppresses immune function, elevates cortisol, accelerates aging, and increases vulnerability to disease. Conversely, strong social bonds reduce inflammation, lower stress hormones, and enhance immune response. Ancient humans living in close, interdependent communities were receiving biological benefits from that togetherness that would take modern scientists centuries to even begin to measure. The healing power of their community was not metaphorical. It was physiological. And speaking of the mind-body connection, ancient healing traditions across virtually every culture on Earth incorporated what we now call the placebo effect, and perhaps something beyond even that. Shamans, medicine men and women, healers of every kind performed rituals, told stories, created ceremony around illness and recovery. For a long time, modern science dismissed this as ignorance, as people fooling themselves with magical thinking. But the more we study the placebo effect, the more astonishing it becomes. Placebos can produce measurable physiological changes, real reductions in pain neurotransmitters, real changes in immune markers, real improvements in recovery outcomes. The ritual of healing activates healing biology. Ancient healers did not know the neuroscience, but they had discovered the phenomenon empirically over thousands of years of watching people recover or not recover, and paying very close attention to what made the difference. There is also the question of genetic resilience. Ancient humans who survived epidemics, who fought off infections, who recovered from injuries passed their genes on. Those who did not, did not. Over hundreds of thousands of years, this brutal selection process meant that human immune systems were constantly being honed, sharpened, and refined. The survivors of every plague, every outbreak, every infection wave became the ancestors of the next generation, passing on slightly better immune machinery each time. We are, in a very real biological sense, descended from an unbroken line of survivors. Every single person reading or listening to this today exists because every single one of their ancestors was strong enough, or lucky enough, or clever enough to survive long enough to reproduce. That inheritance lives in your cells right now. Of course. We must not romanticize the ancient world. Life expectancy numbers from prehistoric times can be misleading. They are dragged down dramatically by catastrophic infant and child mortality rates. Many children died before their 5th birthday from infections, parasites, and injuries that today would be trivially treated. Those who survived childhood often lived remarkably vigorous lives, but childbirth was an incredibly dangerous event for women. Injuries that are minor today could be fatal then, and epidemics could wipe out entire communities without warning or defense. The ancient world was genuinely brutal in ways that are difficult to fully comprehend from the comfort of modern life. Modern medicine has saved billions of lives and relieved unimaginable suffering. That is not in question. But what is also true, and what this story reveals, is that ancient humans were far more than passive victims of a dangerous world. They were active, intelligent, creative problem solvers who developed sophisticated healing systems using nothing but observation, experimentation, and accumulated wisdom passed through generations. They used plants that worked. They developed practices that reduced infection. They built communities that healed. They cultivated bodies through movement, diet, and sunlight that could fight back. And they carried within them the most powerful healing technology ever created, the human immune system itself, forged by millions of years of evolutionary pressure into something that still, to this day, does the heavy lifting of keeping you alive every single moment. The next time you feel a small cut heal itself over a few days, the next time your body wages war on a virus and wins, the next time you recover from an illness and feel yourself coming back to life, remember that what you are witnessing is an ancient technology. One built not in a laboratory, not by any single genius, but by the slow, relentless, extraordinary process of life, figuring out how to persist against every obstacle thrown at it across hundreds of thousands of years. Your body knows how to survive. It always has. And the ancient humans who came before us with nothing but the earth, each other, and their extraordinary capacity to observe and adapt proved it in the most fundamental way possible. They are the reason you are here.